Amber Risswin sat alone in a small gray room at noon. The walls were blank. The camera in the corner blinked a red light. She moved her foot in short circles and glanced at the door. She looked tired, pale, and empty. Her hair sat loose around her shoulders. She reached for a bottle of Gatorade and took 2 slow drinks. She did not understand how much trouble she was in. She thought she was there to explain a misunderstanding. She had no idea how her night had been recorded by neighbors and how much blood had been found outside the apartment. The door opened. A tall detective walked in with a folder under his arm. He set 2 bottles of water on the table. Amber, right? Yeah. I'm Detective Edwards. We spoke at the scene. I asked you to come down here so we could talk. He sat down. He did not rush his notes. He did not raise his voice. He moved through the motions like someone who had done this too many times. Before we talk, I need to protect myself, and I need to read you your rights. He read the statement slowly. Her knee bounced. When he finished, she nodded without asking questions. So, broad and general question, what happened? Take a deep breath. There was a pause. Her eyes moved toward the wall. Her voice came quiet. Last night was a culmination of things that had been going on for the past week and month or so. Okay, go on. I've been there since January, and Blake had been progressively more aggressive toward me. He would make abusive statements. He would hold me by the wrists and shake me around. He spit in my face yesterday. He had fits of rage, breaking things and throwing things around. He put scratches on my guitar. The detective wrote without looking up. He worked in simple lines. No reactions, no opinions. And then last night he decided to buy LSD and was acting nutso. Nutso how? He was pacing, yelling, picking up random objects, staring at the ceiling. I laid down on the futon in the center living room. He started to play around with the gun. He was pointing it at me. He had it sideways. Show me sideways. She tilted her wrist. Like this. So what did you do? I grabbed it and pushed his hand away. I grabbed it again and I fired. The room stayed still for 3 seconds. The detective lifted his eyes for the first time. Where did you shoot him? I think I shot him in his face. And why there? He was in front of me. He was smothering me. He was within arm's reach. He was right there. The detective wrote. He kept his head down. What happened next? He started spilling blood. Then he came up to get me. That's when I caught him. Caught him how? With my knife. She said it without shaking. The detective kept his tone even. Where's the knife? In my pocket. What did you do with it? I caught him on the side of his neck. The detective paused his writing. What did he do after that? He opened the door and got outside. He started screaming for help. The detective did not interrupt. He let her continue. The guard showed up. He was threatening me. He kicked me. Why did he kick you? They thought I was some prostitute. She said it like it was unimportant. More like an annoyance than a detail in a homicide investigation. So as Blake crawled outside what was going on, were you behind him? I was behind him. I was trying to get him back inside. I didn't want to deal with people outside. The detective leaned back. He crossed his arms. So the first shot in the face. Then he stands. Then he is moving toward the door. Then you stab him. Then he gets outside. Then he yells for help. Correct. Yes. The detective tapped the pen on the table 3 times. You said he was aggressive toward you before last night. Yes. He spit in your face yesterday. Yes. He scratched your guitar. Yes. He held you by the wrists and shook you. Yes. You stabbed him once inside. Then he went outside. Yes. Did you stab him again? Amber stared at him. Her eyes moved. She struggled to answer. I cut him. Where? On his neck. That is where we need clarity. We have witnesses who say they saw you walk behind him and slice his throat. Her expression did not change. It was blank. No shock. No fear. He kept grabbing at me. He was trying to bring me down to his level. He was still threatening me. So that is why you cut him outside? Yes. The detective returned to writing. Amber looked at his pen as if waiting for a grade. She asked a strange question. Am I in trouble today? The detective looked up. I have to check the status. Blake was taken to the hospital. We need to know his condition. She nodded slowly. I just didn't want to be blamed for something. I wanted to get my stuff. Put the car back. Call about this. Let them know Blake is a scary man. That is what I wanted to do. Her tone sounded honest from her own point of view. The problem for her was simple. The detective was not grading feelings. He was building a timeline of blood and wounds. He closed his folder for a moment and asked one last question for the hour. When you say you wanted him done, what do you mean? Amber blinked once. Dead. Away. The detective stopped moving. He did not blink. He did not adjust his seat. That is noted. He stood up and stepped out of the room. Amber leaned back in the chair. She reached for her Gatorade again. Her fingers shook for the first time. She still thought she was explaining self-defense. She still thought there was a version of this where she walked out of the station. The night before the interrogation began with noise. The shared apartment in the complex was dim and cluttered. A guitar leaned against a wall with fresh scratch marks on its body. Empty food containers sat on a low table. Pill bottles rattled on the counter. The air smelled of cigarettes and sweat. Amber had been sleeping on the futon in the living room. She used her backpack as a pillow and covered herself with a thin blanket. Her phone was at 5% battery. Her hands were cold. Her stomach hurt from a long day without food. She tried to sleep through Blake's yelling in the adjacent room. Blake paced back and forth. He opened and closed drawers. He laughed to himself. Then he stopped laughing and cursed at the walls. He looked at his phone. He threw his shoes across the room. He picked up a guitar pick and flicked it like a coin. His behavior had become more unpredictable during the past weeks. Neighbors ignored the noise because they had grown used to it. Blake shouted for drugs at 10:37 p.m. He used his phone to order a small sheet of LSD. He waited for delivery with restless movement, pacing near the window. When the drugs arrived, he handed cash through the door and closed it quickly. The seller walked away without conversation. Amber woke up at 11:24 p.m. to the sound of glass breaking. A beer bottle had hit the tile. Blake laughed and said nothing. Amber turned her head and tried to ignore him. She pulled the blanket closer to her neck. "Wake up," Blake said. She did not answer. "I said wake up." He walked toward the futon, holding the handgun by the barrel. He tapped the gun on the side of his leg while staring at the ceiling. His pupils looked wide. His jaw was clenched tight. His voice dropped low. "You listening to me?" Amber sat up slowly. Her heart rate climbed. She tried to keep her voice flat. "I don't want to argue with you." Blake crouched down near her. He held the gun sideways and pointed it at her face. "Look at me," he said. She stared at his shoes. She swallowed hard. She stayed silent. He tilted his wrist and rotated the gun in a slow circle. "You scared? I bet you're scared." He spit on the floor. Some of the spit landed on her blanket. She wiped it with the edge of the fabric. He laughed. "Say something," he said. Amber reached forward quickly, pushed his wrist, and redirected the gun toward the ceiling. The move surprised him. He jerked back and lost control of the grip. She grabbed the gun with both hands. Her chest tightened. Blake lunged forward to take it back. This is the moment where Amber later said she let loose. The neighbors did not see the gunshot, but 4 of them heard it. The shot fired at close range. Blake fell backward. Blood splattered on the futon, the floor, and the side of a cardboard box. A small red pool formed near his cheek. He held his face with both hands and screamed. Amber stood frozen for 2 seconds. The gun shook in her hands. She backed toward the wall. Her breathing grew loud in her own ears. She tried to get a grip on reality, but the noise in her head would not stop. Blake rolled sideways. His legs twitched. He pushed himself to his feet. Red liquid soaked his shirt. His voice came out thick and wet. "You ruined this," he yelled. He stumbled toward the front door. His blood dripped onto the tile. His footsteps left a thin red trail. He pressed his body against the door and pushed it open. Air from outside rushed into the room. Amber reached into her pocket. Her fingers found the folding knife. She pulled it out with a downward jerk. Her hand shook. Her arm tingled. She walked toward Blake with fast steps. This is the part Amber described as catching him. She used a knife on the side of his neck. The cut was sharp and shallow at first. It opened a thin line that widened as Blake tried to push her away. He staggered out the door. He ran across the walkway and down the ramp toward the street. He yelled for help. A neighbor on the third floor heard him and dialed emergency services. Another neighbor opened a window and saw Blake fall to his knees. Both later told police the same thing. Both described Amber following behind him. Amber reached Blake near the curb. One witness saw her pull Blake's head toward her and slice his neck again. The cut was longer and deeper. Blood spurted outward and stained the concrete. Blake gasped for air. His hand shook. His body trembled. Amber backed away when she heard other voices. "What are you doing?" someone yelled. A security guard from the complex ran toward Blake and tried to stop the bleeding with his hands. When Amber walked toward them, the guard kicked her in the leg and told her to get away. She backed up and said nothing. More neighbors emerged from their units. Some shouted at Amber. Some shouted at Blake. A few recorded on their phones. Blue lights from emergency vehicles reflected off the apartment windows. Paramedics arrived and placed Blake on a stretcher. They pressed towels to his face and neck and rushed him to the hospital. Amber watched from a distance. She did not leave yet. Her breathing had not slowed. Her mind looked blank from the outside. Her hands trembled. Her shirt had dried blood near the wrist. The neighbors did not know her story. They only saw a woman chase a bleeding man into the street and cut his neck. Their calls to the police were short and blunt. They said she needed to be arrested. They did not ask questions about who started the fight or why it happened. When the police cruisers parked near the curb, Amber stepped backward into the shadows and turned toward the parking lot. She headed for Blake's Monte Carlo. She opened the door, slid into the driver's seat, and started the engine. She drove away with the lights off. Police arrived seconds later. They interviewed the neighbors, secured the blood trail, and recorded the scene. They followed the red stains back to the apartment. They found blood on the futon, the wall, and the doorknob. They logged the guitar with scratch marks. They noted the broken beer bottle and the burnt foil on the counter. One officer said, "She'll come back for her things." He was right. Amber parked the Monte Carlo 2 blocks away and fell asleep in the front seat. The morning after the shooting, the blood on the sidewalk had dried into dark patches. The security guard had washed his hands 3 times before going home. 2 officers had spent most of the night documenting the walkway and matching witness statements. Blake was in the hospital with tubes in his throat and dressings across his face. Surgeons worked through the night to stop the bleeding and stabilize his airway. Amber slept in the Monte Carlo until sunlight made the windshield hot. She woke up slow. Her hair stuck to her cheek. She looked around the empty street and tried to remember how she had gotten there. When the memories returned, her face did not show shock or fear. Her eyes simply settled into focus. Her main concern was her belongings in the apartment. She stepped out of the car and stretched. She checked her pockets for the knife. It was still there. She closed the knife and pushed it deep into her jeans. She walked back toward the complex with steady pace. Her shirt was clean. She had changed during the night after the blood had dried on her first outfit. The neighbors did not expect her to return, but she did. 2 women were standing outside when Amber reached the gate. One pointed at Amber and whispered to the other. They backed away as she approached. Amber did not look at them. She walked straight to the apartment door. The front lock had blood smears from the night before. She tried the handle. It opened. She stepped inside. The room still smelled like blood and sweat. The futon had a dark stain near the pillow area. The rug had a red smear that dragged toward the door. A towel sat soaked in the sink. Amber moved around the blood like someone stepping over puddles. She unplugged her charger, grabbed her backpack, and took a pile of clothes from the corner. She placed everything inside a plastic bag. She looked at the guitar for 5 seconds before deciding to leave it. She walked out through the doorway again. Down the street, the officers in the squad car were talking to another neighbor. Their conversation stopped when they saw Amber walking with a bag in her hand. They stepped out of the vehicle and called to her. She did not run. She did not look surprised. She placed the bag on the ground and raised her hands halfway. The officers did not arrest her on the curb. They asked her to sit on the steps. One officer asked her name. She answered calmly. One asked about the Monte Carlo. She said she borrowed it. When asked if she stabbed Blake outside, she paused for 2 seconds and said she wanted to get him back inside so there would not be a scene. She claimed that she needed to stop him from causing chaos. The officers called a detective to the location. When Detective Edwards arrived, he asked her if she would come down to the station to talk. She said yes without hesitation. Her voice was flat. She did not ask for a lawyer. She did not ask about Blake. She did not ask about charges. She asked if she could get some water. The detective told her he would arrange it at the station. Witnesses continued to talk to officers while Amber waited in the back of the cruiser. Their statements shared the same key points. Blake was bleeding. Blake was yelling for help. Amber followed him. Amber cut him in the neck. Some said she jumped on his back. Some said she held his head. Some said she sliced him twice. All agreed that she made the final wound outside, not inside. One nurse later wrote that Blake arrived conscious but unable to speak. He blinked for answers. He wrote short words on a board. He repeated one phrase twice. She chased me. The nurse reported his words to the attending physician. The attending passed the information to the responding detective. By mid-morning, the police had collected witness statements, recorded the scene, and confirmed that Amber was in custody. The district office asked for a fast update. They wanted to know if Blake would survive. They wanted to know if the charge would be attempted murder or murder. The hospital said it was too early to tell. Blake had lost significant blood but was still alive. Surgeons were working to protect his airway and prevent infection. The detective returned to the station after speaking with hospital staff. He read through the witness statements. He compared them to Amber's first version of the story. The gaps were obvious. Amber described fear and self-defense. Witnesses described pursuit and follow-up attack. Amber claimed he was crawling inside. Witnesses saw him running outside. Amber claimed he was threatening her. Witnesses heard him begging for help. Amber claimed she stood back. Witnesses saw her cutting his throat. The detective took a short breath, closed the folder, and walked to the interrogation room. Inside that small gray room, Amber waited with her Gatorade. Her face showed no panic. Her arms rested loosely on the table. When the detective stepped in, she looked at him with steady eyes. She still behaved like someone explaining a misunderstanding. The detective sat down again. Amber, before we move forward, I need details about what happened once Blake got outside. She nodded. I was behind him. He was bleeding. I was trying to get him back inside. The detective paused. Witnesses said you cut him outside. He was smothering me, she said. He was running and yelling for help. He was threatening me, she said. The detective leaned forward. Threatening how? She stared at the wall. He wanted me down at his level, she said. The detective looked at the camera. He knew the next hour would reveal how far Amber would hold her story. Outside the interrogation room, a nurse from the hospital called the station. Blake had survived surgery. He was in critical condition, but still breathing. That phone call changed the classification from homicide to attempted murder. Detective Edwards placed a new notepad on the table. The paper was clean. The handwriting from earlier had been tucked inside a folder. Amber looked at the fresh pages with interest, as if the clean paper meant the situation had reset. It had not. The detective started with the timeline. You shot Blake inside the apartment. Then you cut him inside. Then he ran outside. Correct. Amber gave a slow nod. Why did you cut him again outside? He was still threatening me. How? He wanted to drag me down. Drag you down how? She paused. Her eyes flicked toward the door. She rubbed her arm. He kept grabbing at me. The detective leaned back. Was he crawling or running at that point? No crawling. He stood up. He went to the door. He ran out. Did he say anything? He said, help me. He said it loud. Were you holding the knife during that time? Yes. What did you plan to do with it? I planned to defend myself. He spits. He throws things. He has fits. He plays with knives. He broke an aerosol can on the bed once. He kicked bones at me while I slept. The detective wrote a line about the aerosol can. He paused and looked up. He said you tried to get him back inside so there would not be a scene. Yes. Why did you care about that? I did not want to deal with people outside. What people? Neighbors? Guards? Randoms? The detective stopped writing. His tone shifted. You followed a man who had been shot in the face and stabbed in the neck. You followed him outside toward other people. You had a knife in your hand. You were covered in blood. Why would you want him back inside? Amber shrugged. I did not want to deal with it outside. The detective lifted the pen, pointed at his own notes, and continued. Witnesses said you jumped on his back. Did you? No. Witnesses said you held his head. Did you? No. Witnesses said you sliced his throat from the side. Did you? Yes, but only like a quick swipe. Why? To get him down. What does get him down mean? Amber stared at the table, not moving. So dead. Amber closed her eyes for 2 seconds. She opened them again. Yeah. The detective kept his voice steady. When you say you wanted him done, you meant dead? Yes. The detective wrote a full sentence in neat handwriting. He did not read it aloud. Amber watched the pen stroke across the page. You left in the Monte Carlo. Why? I wanted to get my stuff. I wanted to put the car back. I wanted to call about this. Why did you not call right away? I wanted to explain first so they would not think I did something wrong. The detective pressed his lips together. He waited a few seconds. You understand that you shot someone and cut someone in the neck in front of witnesses. Most people would call police immediately. You left the scene. You changed clothes. You hid the car. You came back on foot. Why? I wanted to get my stuff. The detective turned to a new page. What did you change into? Black shirt and jeans. Where are the first clothes? In the backpack. Where's the backpack? Right there. The detective signaled an officer who entered, collected the backpack, and stepped out. He closed the door behind him. Amber watched the door click shut. Where's the knife you used? In my pocket last night. In the bag now. We found 2 knives. One silver, one small. Which one did you use? The silver one. The detective drew a small rectangle on the page, marking the shape of the handle. You said Blake was still dangerous outside. He was bleeding from his face and neck. His airway was damaged. He could not breathe well. Why did you think he was threatening you at that moment? He kept moving. So movement equals threat. Yes. The detective tapped the table with his finger. Doctor said he would have died outside without medical care. Did you know that? Amber shrugged again. He always bounced back. He never stops. He does that. He always gets up. There was something chilling in her voice. Blake's resilience was a complaint, not admiration. What did you think would happen after the cuts? He would stop. Stop what? Being on me. The detective stopped writing. He was not on you. He was running from you. Amber blinked. She said nothing. The detective leaned back in his chair now. His questions shifted tone. When you drove off in the Monte Carlo, did you think Blake would survive? No. Did you think he was dead? Maybe. What word would you use? Amber thought for 6 seconds. Done. The detective closed the notepad. Blake is alive. Amber blinked twice. Her face did not break. Her posture did not collapse. She did not ask how. She did not ask if he was stable. She did not ask if he could talk. She only asked one question. The detective looked at the camera. His voice dropped lower. Now we classify this as attempted murder. The charge may change depending on his condition. You will not go home today. You will be held. Amber sat in total stillness. She glanced at her empty Gatorade bottle. She looked at the corner of the room. She lightly rubbed her stomach as if trying to ease heartburn. Her next sentence came out flat. Am I going to court? Yes. Am I going to prison? It depends on the plea and the trial. Amber nodded. No tears, no panic, no tremors in her voice. Can I use the restroom? The detective pointed to the door. A female officer entered and escorted her out. The camera in the room continued recording the empty chairs for a full minute before the tape was paused. Outside the interrogation room, the walls smelled of coffee and disinfectant. Officers talked in low voices about the charges. One asked if Blake would talk when he woke up. Another said the surgeons needed another 6 hours before they would say anything. The district attorney's office requested a briefing. They wanted the statement, the witness list, the medical notes, and the surveillance logs. They wanted to know if Amber's words could be used in court. The detective stacked the documents. He wrote one final note on the cover page. She does not understand her own case. And he was right. The district attorney's office reviewed the case file for 3 days. They lined up the witness statements. They matched the medical report to the photographs. They checked the surveillance timestamps against the first interview. The facts formed a clear picture. Blake had been shot in the face and cut in the neck. He fled for help. Amber chased him. Neighbors saw her cut him again while he begged for help. She left the scene. She changed clothes. She tried to return for her belongings. She spoke to police without a lawyer. She admitted she wanted him done. She defined done as dead. Blake survived surgery. His jaw required reconstruction. His airway required a tracheostomy. His voice was damaged. His swallowing required therapy. The surgeons removed a small fragment of bullet near the nasal cavity. Infection was the biggest risk during the first week. He stayed in intensive care with limited communication. He wrote his answers on a dry erase board. His first message to detectives was short and sharp. She chased me. His handwriting trembled. The letters were uneven. The nurses confirmed he had no signs of hallucination or fever at the time. Police asked him why Amber attacked him. He wrote one sentence. She thought I was laughing at her. The words said more than they appeared to say. They described a relationship built on resentment and humiliation. Blake claimed he had not pointed the gun at Amber to threaten her. He claimed he had been messing around because he was high and bored. The detectives did not trust that explanation. They believed the relationship had been toxic for months. They believed the drugs and the fights pushed the tension over the edge. The district attorney charged Amber with attempted murder with a deadly weapon. They added aggravated assault and vehicle theft. The case moved through the court system at a measured pace. Amber met her public defender. He sat across from her in a small consultation room in the county jail. She asked if Blake survived. He told her yes. She asked if Blake was talking. He told her not yet. She asked about the Monte Carlo. He told her the car was impounded. She did not ask if she would lose. She asked how long the process would take. The attorney explained the standard timeline for pretrial hearings, motions, and negotiations. Amber listened without emotion. Her tone remained flat. She barely blinked. During the first hearing, Amber entered the courtroom in shackles. She wore a beige jail uniform. Her hair was tied back. The judge read the charges. Amber answered each question with short replies. Yes. No. Understand. Blake did not attend the hearing. He remained in the hospital. His mother sat in the courtroom instead. She listened with her hands pressed together in front of her mouth. She stared at Amber without speaking. Amber did not turn toward the gallery. The prosecutor introduced the basic outline of the case. He listed the locations of the wounds. He listed the witness statements. He noted that the defendant returned to the residence to collect her belongings instead of contacting police. He noted that the defendant defined her goal as done, meaning dead. The judge set the next hearing date. In the weeks that followed, Blake learned to speak again through a damaged voice. His vocal cords had been cut. His speech became quiet and strained. He moved between whisper and rasp. When his mother asked if he wanted to testify, he nodded. Blake understood the impact his voice would have on a jury. The prosecutor prepared for trial. The defense prepared a self-defense claim. The medical reports undercut that position. The witness testimony undercut it further. The defense reviewed the recordings. Amber provided her story in clear detail, without hesitation, without visible remorse, and without acknowledging the legal consequences. Her own words became the strongest evidence against her. The public defender recommended a plea. The prosecutor made an offer: 20 years in state prison for attempted murder. The defense requested 15. The prosecutor refused. Blake's family wanted accountability. The state believed 20 was already lenient given the nature of the attack. During the pre-plea meeting in the jail, Amber asked one question: if I take 20, does Blake have to talk? The defense attorney paused. No, he does not have to testify. Amber nodded once. Then I'll take 20. The courtroom was silent during the plea. Amber stood in the same beige uniform. Her wrists were cuffed. The judge read through the agreement. Amber confirmed each point with steady voice. She admitted guilt to attempted murder. She admitted the use of a deadly weapon. She admitted she fled the scene. She confirmed that the plea was voluntary. Blake sat in the front row. His face showed scars near the jawline. A faint tube mark remained below his throat. His voice had not fully recovered. When the judge asked if the victim wanted to make a statement, Blake stood. He spoke slowly. "She chased me. I tried to get away. I tried to call for help. She wanted me dead. I'm still here." His mother cried. Blake sat down. Amber looked at him for 1 second, then looked away. The judge read the sentence. 20 years in the Department of Corrections. No one spoke. The deputies approached. They guided Amber toward the side door. She did not resist. She did not break down. She adjusted her cuffs and kept walking. Her face appeared blank and untroubled. It was the same expression she had in the interrogation room, the same expression she wore when she described cutting someone's throat in the street. Detective Edwards closed the case file and placed it on the shelf. He wrote one last line in the administrative summary. She never understood the weight of her decisions. Blake went through several months of rehabilitation. He regained partial function of his voice. He regained his ability to eat without assistance. The scars on his face remained visible. His medical file was updated with swallowing therapy and airway care. He did not return to the apartment complex. His mother moved him into her house. Amber was processed into the state prison system. She did not fight with inmates. She did not talk about the case. Officers describe her as quiet. She did not cause problems during intake. She did not ask for counseling. She did not appeal her sentence. The Monte Carlo was never claimed. It sat in the impound lot until it was scrapped for parts. Case closed.